Hi, this is Trev and welcome to my blog. Have you missed me? I've missed you guys, I must say. Just to put your minds at rest, well, some of your minds anyway, nothing bad's happened to me, okay guys? I know a lot of you have missed my videos and a lot of you are worried that something's happened to me. It most certainly hasn't happened to me. Well, nothing bad anyway. So, I don't know if you saw my New Year's upload, but I basically put a video together telling you about I was working 7 days a week trying to incorporate doing YouTube and doing my van business and everything else, and it was all getting a little bit too much for me to keep up. So my videos in the near future are going to be a bit more sporadic, more like clusters of videos uploaded rather than one a week, but nothing stays like this forever, does it? So I may well be doing weekly uploads in another couple of months. I don't know, because things change all the time, and change is good. It really is fantastic. So no need to worry. There will be lots of good stuff to come from me in the near and the distant future, I'm sure. So getting back to this video, it's all about anti-corrosion stuff that you do after your restoration. So I don't know everything about the subject. This is the products I've used in the last 30 years. I've kind of tried to build this video with the respect of the enthusiast, the DIYer, somebody being able to do it in their own garage, right? Having to have thousands and thousands of pounds worth of equipment. So I've built that in mind as well, and hope you enjoy the video. You must have heard the expression, the preparation is the key to everything. Well, no truer thing said than with regards to bodywork, I suppose, really. So the more old paint, old underseal and loose rust that you can remove before you apply any product on the top, the better, really. With regards to things like paint reactions and, more importantly, just literally what you put over the top flaking off. So this is sandblasting, so this has been sandblasted and then it's been epoxy primered. So epoxy primer, really good product because it's a lot less porous than ordinary primer. And the other tools you could use are these like little abrasive tools, so wire wheels on drills, clean and strip wheels, roll up discs, or remove the old paint from these things here, you could see, to make them look brilliant. This is a universal tool. This is for underseal removal. You can see this wire brush with these funny fingers on the end, and this removes underseal really well because it doesn't clog up. It's got a nice adjustable handle, so you can get it into all different kinds of positions to be able to get to places to remove what you got to remove. So there's the wire wheel, and there's a clean and strip wheel. That clean and strip wheel is really good for getting rid of old paint and rust. That's a toffee wheel, that's for removing glues. Say you removed a moulding from a car and left glue up there, you could use it for that. So there's a quick demo of me using the universal tool with the wire wheel on there, removing old underseal. Like I say, it doesn't clog up that wire wheel like it would a standard wire wheel or standard abrasives. Then I'm polishing off the old paint and rust with a clean and strip wheel. As you can see, it's coming out really bright. Always make sure you use safety equipment. And the mask that I'm wearing is only 10 minutes old. Look how dirty it's looking already from the old rust. So always make sure you wear a mask. Belt sanders are good as well. So there's a 20mm belt sander, that's the bigger one. 10mm belt sander, excellent for getting into tight spots and removing little spots. These are a Rolox surface conditioning disc that's used on a little mini grinder, or I used a Scotch-Brite clean and strip wheel, probably my favourite tool. See if I can get your part number going on. Yep. And also I use those on a converted die grinder to take it. Always wear goggles because these are pretty lethal, these things. I found these tools absolutely invaluable when I was rubbing down the chassis, getting all the old loose rust and paint off. These wire wheels just fit straight on a 4.5 inch angle grinder. They're extremely aggressive You definitely need thick overalls, thick gloves, and definitely some kind of face protection, because the little bristles fire off and they stick straight into you. So you're going to be blinded if you don't wear some kind of face protection when using these things. You have been warned, but they are really, really effective. Also, the good old fibre disc on the angle grinder. These are Cubitron 2-3M discs. Probably most expensive disc on the market, but worth their weight in gold. So I used these products to get rid of all the old paint and the old rust off the chassis on the van. So this is my old van chassis. As you can see, it's come up nice and bright. It was very, very rusty in places, and a lot of old paint on there. And as you can see, the wire wheels on the angle grinders, and then go over with a Cubitron afterwards. Got it, you know, as good as if you'd shot blasted it, to be quite honest with you. I think it's a pretty good job. And this is a little video of my front axle on the van being shot blasted. Of course, if you can find somebody to do shot blasting, you can take all your suspension off and get it done somewhere else. And this is what I used. It's epoxy mastic made by Rustbuster. Epoxy mastic 1-to-1 Rustbuster. What a fantastic finish, what a fantastic product. It's had rave reviews for longevity. Independent reviews done by different places as well have all scored it pretty much top. It's quite thick and a bit of a fiddle to apply, but once you get the hang of it, it's really, really good stuff. I use an SSG 501 Sealy cheap as chip spray gun with a 2.2 air cap, and that seems to get it out there, get it on what I want to paint it on, and it's a nice finish. I do have to slightly over thin the product, I find, put a little bit more thinners in than they recommend, because it's just a bit thick if you don't. And everything's been done, all the underbody and all the chassis components and all the suspension components on the van have all been stripped to bare metal, and then Rustbuster epoxy mastic 1-to-1 put over the top. If you want to buy this stuff, just put a search in on Google and it comes straight up. I'm happy with it. I've used about 10 litres of the product at least, so it doesn't go that far. I even coated the engine block and the gearbox, as you can see with it. It's really good, and it's also brake fluid resistant, extremely resistant. So once the epoxy coating's done, you could think about applying something over the top. Something like anti-stone chip coating, anti-chip coating, stone chip protection it's sometimes called. This is probably one of the best on the market, made by 3M. It's really good because it's quite hard wearing and it's very much non-porous. A lot of the other stone chip protections are quite porous and will actually allow moisture through and start going rusty underneath. So into the paint shop, lots of different paint guns here you can see for applying different types of paint, different finishes. And we come to the Schutz gun, or the underseal gun as it's sometimes referred to. This is the gun that you would use to apply the anti-chip coating. This is what it looks like when it's been applied. This is in its unpainted state. So this is over paintable, but we'll get back to that in a minute. Something else you could consider would be spray sealing. Again, spray sealer, we're stepping up a little bit in cost now. You can get different guns. This is a gun that sprays it out of a small nozzle on the end. You can get lots of different effects. This is like more of a paint gun type spraying sealer gun, so that's a spray sealer on like a paint gun. This is a 2-pack sealer. Again, we're stepping up in cost again, and you have to invest in a special little gun to apply this as well. All these products work really well, but they all vary wildly in price. Rotisserie is always a good plan if you're going to do this kind of thing, because applying coatings on your back, I've done it many times, it's no fun at all, and it's not particularly effective. If you're going to go all out and invest in a rotisserie, it will really help you not only with your welding but with painting the undersides. You see this vehicle's been primed and seam sealed, ready for its underbody coating. Do a lot of Porsches. All the Porsches are always painted underneath body colour, so they'll be spray sealed underneath. These have already been done and painted underneath, and then they're masked off to paint the outside afterwards, so that there's no contamination from the floor getting into the top coat. And you can just see it under the wheel arch there. I've got a couple more examples just to sort of give you an idea. There again you can see it under the arch. So it's all body colour, looks really nice. I quite like this myself. I've painted many of my own projects like this. The only problem I do find is you do have to sort of keep on top of it. Tar from the road gets on it, messes it up. You have to keep cleaning that off, so it is a bit of a maintenance faff. So I've decided not to go down this road with a van. I've decided to go down a different road. So once the epoxy coating's been applied, you really need to give it a good braid with some of this stuff. I mean, this is like a kind of Scotch-Brite product. That would be a 3M product, but this is a Merkur one. Same thing, just give it a good rub down before you use any sealers. I use spray sealer as a brushing sealer. It's like a multi-function sealer. So it's been all rubbed down with the Scotch-Brite red pad, and I've sealed up all the joints. I try and steer clear of polyurethane adhesives, because when you apply shorts over the top, the shorts doesn't dry very well where the polyurethane is, so that's why I use that other kind of sealer. I just use the polyurethane really as an adhesive more than anything else. So this is the shorts gun. The can's been shaken well, and then the shorts gun pierces the seal on the top, and it's ready for use. Absolutely everything has been masked off so that I don't get any underseal. The underseal is only going to go just under the arches on my van, just to give it some build to try and repel the stone chips. I won't be putting it underneath all of the chassis and all of the underbody. I'll be using a different product for that. So you see how well it's all masked off. Of course, this has already been epoxy coated, it's completely finished. What I'm doing now is really to protect all the work that I've already done. So again, a good rub down. After it's sealed up, the sealer's gone off, rub it down again, make sure the next product sticks to the sealer. Applying the underseal under the wheel arches. I tend to spray it at very high pressure and get well back, and this makes for quite a nice flat finish. I don't want to get tons and tons of the stuff on there. I'm just looking for a nice, even, fairly smooth finish. Next is Dinatrol 4941, available in an aerosol can or in the canisters that would attach to an underseal gun, but it's a very thin product and I wouldn't want to underseal it on. It's too nice a product for that. This is a specialist gun. This is a pressure pot gun, and this is for applying Dinatrol. This is what we use at the restoration shop, Race and Restoration. This is their equipment. And this is one of the lads, I think it's Rory, this is undersealing under this car, not undersealing, Dinatrol rather I should say. This is a very good product for just sort of every few years getting the vehicle in, masking off all the bits that don't need to be coated, giving it a quick Scotch-Brite down just to remove anything loose, make sure the next coat keys to it, and then just going around and spraying a nice thin film over everything, and it just tops up that protection that you've got under the vehicle. This is why I've decided to use this myself. Just thought, being blacked underneath, it's fairly low maintenance. I can just top it up when I want. I haven't got to worry about it being stone chipped or anything, and on the van I just want to use the van. So this was my solution to the pressure pot gun. I've bought this Clark 2 litre pressure pot gun, and this works really well. And I've just attached my cheapo SSG 501 Sealy gun to the pressure pot gun. Just made a little adapter up there for the top, and it's a 2.2 air cap on that. So it's quite a heavy gun anyway, but without the pressure pot it just won't come out. It just won't go through a conventional paint gun because it's just too thick. And this will hold a whole 2 litre capacity of the Dinitrol. Just adjusting the pressure here, because you can adjust the pressure up and down to get more paint volume out of your paint gun. Just give you a little demo of how it comes out the paint gun. So you can get it nice and light or quite heavy if you want. So what I'm doing here is just giving everything a thin film. Make sure you wear protective equipment, as always. Respirator, spraying overalls. You don't want that stuff getting in your hair. Okay, so I'll talk you through what I did yesterday. This is the following day after I painted it. And what I did is I shortsed underneath all 4 wheel arches with the 3M shorts to give it some kind of stone chip protection. I used the shorts gun at a very high pressure, higher than recommended. The reason I do this is because the shorts gun acts as a kind of venturi. The shorts is sucked out of the gun up a tube, and then it hits a jet of air. The higher the pressure is, the more it atomizes the shorts. So I first heated it up to lower the viscosity, then put it in the gun, and while it was still nice and hot, I turned the pressure right up. Got some distance back as well. If you get too close, then what will happen is you'll get it on too thick, and then the air pressure will then blow it around the panel, and you'll get a horrible uneven pattern to it. I just wanted it to be as flat as possible, but with a fairly reasonable build. Allowed this to dry for a few hours in a heated workshop with ventilation before I then gave everything a coat of the Dinitrol black. And I just gave up under the wheel arches a very light coat as well over the top of the 3M shorts. The Dinitrol black stuff goes on nice and flat with a spray gun. It's quite thin. You could build it up in layers if that's what you were after. What I was after doing is just giving everything a thin film, just as an added layer of protection, because it is epoxy I'm coating. Epoxy can be susceptible to UV damage. It's underneath, there's not going to be much light underneath, so it should be okay, but I've just given it a coat of this stuff. It's also got chipped and marked in a few places, and this just ensures that it's got some added protection on there. It dries well. It's a waxy film. It's very flexible, extremely flexible. If you spray it on a piece of paper, you can screw it up, unravel the paper again, and it's not sort of come off. It doesn't crack or peel or anything like that. You must prep it well though. If you spray this stuff straight over the top of epoxy, it will peel off in a sheet. So you have to prep the epoxy with a red pad Scotch Brite before you apply it, and when you do that it normally sticks quite well. It is a waxy film, but it's a dry waxy film. As you can see, it's not in any way sticking to my hand, but it is got quite a waxy texture to it to repel the water, and that's why I've used it. So we're all ready now to unmask, so I'm going to unmask it and I'll talk you through the wax procedure next. It's also very possible to get a lovely flat finish with Dinatrol if you apply it straight over the top of a primer product. So whatever's underneath it will mimic it. So if your primer's nice and flat, you can get a beautifully flat finish. If that's what you're after, you know, as opposed to something that would come out of a Schutz gun. Not until all the painting processes had been completed, i.e. the top coats, the undersealing, the anti-corrosion protection coatings, not until they'd all been applied would I consider even thinking about using a cavity wax or a wax coating. So the reason being, of course, is that it will prevent anything else from sticking, and you don't want wax contamination where you're going to paint. So all the painting processes are complete, so now I'm going to talk about cavity wax and wax coatings. So this is undoubtedly the best cavity wax gun I have ever found. I've bought several guns over the years. It's a 3M gun and holds about a litre of cavity wax, and it comes with two different lances. Now the one lance has got like a pipe on it with a crushed end, and this almost acts like a little spray gun because it dispenses down the tube a measured amount of cavity wax and compressed air via your compressor, and it sprays really well, so you get like a nice sort of fan coming out at the end of this. This is extremely useful for open cavities, i.e. the insides of wings, underbody where you want to put a wax coating on. The other lance that it comes with is got like a traditional sort of end on it. I'll see if I can get a close-up on that. So there we go, you can see the end. It's got little holes all the way around it, and that blasts wax out at all angles. So you go in through a small hole into a cavity, and you can just fill it full of wax, just inject it in there, coat everything really well, and it's very effective. So the other end of the lances come with this special fitting. Now this fitting's a little bit like an airline coupling and can be just clipped straight into the front of the gun. You can just push it in like this, and then to change them over you just pull this back and release it. Works really well. Like I said, this is most definitely the best gun I've ever bought. I've bought all the ones that kind of work along the same principle as an underseal gun, and I've just found that those just don't work or last as well. So I'll talk a little bit about the different types of waxes that I've got here. There are lots of waxes on the market, and I'll just show you the limited amount that I've got. So I've got some stuff here. It's a 3M product, I believe, and I remember having it in this gun, and I just tipped it into a thinners container. The original container's gone now, but you know, I'll just show you what it's like at room temperature. So as you can see, it's very runny, and it goes straight into the gun and sprays straight out, no problem at all. Now this is great for filling up cavities and voids. It's extremely, well, not extremely thin, but certainly plenty thin enough to pass through the wax oil gun as it is. And this is at room temperature, and this stuff just sprays out and coats everything really well, and then the solvents in the wax evaporate out, and then it sets into a fairly I would say dry film. It never actually truly dries out, this stuff, in any way, and it's great for cavities. It's really good for that sort of thing. I'll show you a couple of the convenience sprays now. So I've got a high temperature wax spray in just an aerosol can, and this is great for engine compartments or anything that's going to get warm, because this kind of wax, if you get it hot, it'll go fluid and start running out. You don't really want that sort of thing happening. So say engine bays or anything that's going to get warm, like I said, up underneath a bonnet or something, high temperature, you can spray it on. Once the solvents have evaporated out, it does set quite hard, and if it gets warm again, it doesn't all just run straight out like this stuff would. So This is another good cavity wax product, and again it's aerosol can, and you can get this lance that goes on it as well. So if you didn't want to invest in a really expensive gun, then you could go down this route and just buy this kind of can with a lance on there, and they're pretty good actually, quite effective. Most of the body shops now use these kinds of things rather than investing in a gun that doesn't get cleaned out, you know. Classic thing, there's one gun for the workshop and only one guy ever cleans it out, and everyone else just uses it and dumps it back on the side again, and it never works when you come to use it. The other kind of wax that I'm going to use under my van is this combi wax. Because the van's constructed of so many pieces of metal that have been welded together, and you always find that rust starts between panels, I thought I'd use this open surface wax so that I can spray this around everything, and it'll give it an extra bit of protection where the paint hasn't got, because of course, you know, you can't get the paint everywhere. And I can blast this with the pipe with a fan on the end in there, and it'll coat everything really well. Once it returns to room temperature and the solvents have dried out, this stuff will set real solid. So this will be a real sort of tough wax coating that would be really hard to remove unless you had something like a steam cleaner or something like that. So it's going to offer really good protection, and it's got good mechanical properties as well. So if something rubbed up against it, it's not just going to rub straight off. So I'll open it up and show you what it's like at room temperature. So I'll try and get some out of the container. There we go. As you can see, it's ultra thick, really thick stuff. And this is just a sort of, I mean, it must be 18 degrees in here. I've got the heater on, it's nice and warm, and that's kind of how well it's set. Now there are solvents in this. When these solvents dry out, it'll become really hard, which is just the kind of thing I'm looking for. This has been warming up for the last hour or so. You can use a hot air gun or something else, and that's what I generally tend to use. You could use, you know, like a bucket of boiling hot water, but the chances are the water will have cooled down before the wax becomes fluid. So as you can see, it's almost like water now, and that's just because it's been warmed up. So I can put this, it's almost just like old engine oil. So I can pour this warmed up product into my cavity wax gun. It's extremely fluid, so it'll flow straight through the gun. I get a nice thin coating on everything because I don't want it too thick. You just really want a thin coating. You don't want to build it up so it's sort of like 2 or 3 mil thick. You just want a nice thin coating that coats everything really nicely. And then because it's quite thin, you also get the added bonus of it drying out quite quickly, especially if you're in a workshop. You don't want those fumes hanging around for weeks on end while it sort of dries out. So that's why I've done this like this. So what I'll do is I'll use the traditional 3M kind of cavity wax. I'll use that inside the cavities, inside the sills, inside the doors, and places where the weather can't get to it. So it's just going to protect those cavities really well. So going to use this on the open surfaces. As soon as I started spraying this, I realised I had a bit of an issue, because where this stuff was hitting hard, it was absolutely great, but the overspray that was coming off it, which was dusting up over other components, was too dusty, and you could actually remove it with your hand, because what was happening is it was instantly drying as it was cooling. So what I had to do was I had to add a splash of Degreaser panel wipe. You could use a bit of white spirits to this combi wax to keep it more fluid. This prolongs the drying time, of course, but I'd rather that than having the issue of it just being dusty, which is what you don't want. You want it to remain as fluid as possible. This is the only problem I experienced really with this product. So I just heated it up first till it was fluid, and then I put a splash of degreaser in, which did make all the difference. I would advise against using thinners to thin this stuff down, because if you put thinners in it, although it will thin it down, when you spray it over your painted products, the thinners may attack the painted product underneath and completely ruin all the work that you've already put into it. So this is just 24 hours since I tipped the thinned wax product onto this piece of paper, and this is completely set dry. No problems at all. Now, the advantages of using a open wax product on open surfaces is that it is relatively tack free as opposed to cavity wax. Cavity wax is typically still quite tacky after it's dried out, and the problem is if you've got a tacky product under your vehicle, then you know the road dirt's going to stick to it, and then that's going to build up and it's going to hold moisture against the underside of your car, and that will eventually create corrosion issues. Yeah, and this is really quite hard, this stuff. Yeah, impressed with this. Really having a job to scratch it off. So this is the front wheel arch of the van. So when I was building the van, I put in these access holes into the box sections. So we've got an access hole there, and that hole goes into the sill. So what I'll do is I'll put the lance inside of there, I'll spray lots of cavity wax in there, and that'll coat the entire inside of the sill panel, protecting it from rust. And then when I've finished that, what I'll do is I'll block the hole up afterwards using something like one of these trim buttons or something like that, that's got like a Christmas tree end on it, and I can just push that into the hole and then put some sealer over the top just to seal the cap off. So seal that cap around with some polyurethane black adhesive, perhaps just spray a tiny bit of Dinitrol over the top or something like that, just to seal it in so that the water can't get in there anymore. And I've got a tiny little access hole right up underneath the sill panel so that it allows any trapped water to come out. So if for any reason moisture got inside that sill, it can't just fill up with water, but I've done it in a way so that the spray from the road can't go up that hole, if you see what I'm saying. So it'll constantly act as a drain and not a feed. So when this wheel arch was constructed, it's actually got an open cavity on the end. I can't show it you because as soon as I put the camera up underneath, I'll be aiming the camera directly into the lights in the ceiling of the garage, you know, just shut the camera down, but there's a cavity. I'll put my finger up there, no problem there. So there's a cavity up in there. This is also a fantastic spot to be able to put that lance up there and push it all the way up round up to here. So it's completely hollow section all the way, and that goes all the way up to where it butts up against the front wing. So I put the lance all the way up there. The lance is about 1.5 meters long, so it'll go virtually anywhere. So I post it up there all the way up to the end, pull back the trigger and allow plenty of cavity wax to come out as I pull the lance back out. So as it's coming out, it's coating all the way up to the end, and then that'll all be coated inside of there, full of wax. So any water go up there, it's just going to roll straight back out because it's got nothing to stick to. So the open wax areas are going to be the axles, the front axle and the rear axle, and all around the suspension. And then any other parts that want coating, that have got any joints, I can just spray it around this area, around here, so it'll just sort of seal off any joints, get a bit of wax up in there. There's lots of places that need it, particularly around the rear end. I feel I can put it also up inside the boxes for the wheel arches, so that'll have plenty of wax coating up in there. There's also across the back panel, there's a closed box section that could do with some as well. The quarters are pretty open, so they're open panels as well. that means that I can ever so easily just coat some wax. I can push the lance right up into the top and spray it all the way, so it'll coat all the way up inside of the quarter panels, make a really nice job of those. And the rear axle, of course. So before I wrap this video up, I'd like to just make quite an interesting and quite important point really about these products. Back in the 1990s, I used to weld up a lot of cars for MOT work and stuff like that, and quite often I'd be welding out like a 1970s Mercedes, and there'd be great swathes of metal missing from underneath the floor, but what was over the top was like an incredibly tough sealer, and it was so tough that what it actually allowed the car to do was to go rusty underneath the coating which was there to protect it. And this is quite a valid point. And going back to the Rust Buster, I spoke to one of the developers. I think his name was Ian. It was a long time ago now, so I can't remember exactly who it was I spoke to, but I was asking him some advice about thinning and about the product in general, and he was telling me that they make the product out of short chain molecules rather than long chain. What this essentially means is that it adheres to the steel that it's being painted on incredibly well. It gets into all the little crevices and joints and everything else, and that adhesion is incredibly strong. But where it isn't incredibly strong is along the structure of the paint, so that if you score a line in it and you've got a piece of bare metal, then on that piece of bare metal, that line, it will go rusty along there because it's exposed, but it can't creep along underneath the paint. Now if you've ever seen powder coating fail, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The powder coating is absolutely brilliant up until the point that it fails. Then when it fails, it's actually, you know, more of an issue. It exacerbates rust situations because it's lying on top of the steel, then holding moisture against the steel, and then the rust can travel along underneath, and it's actually there making it worse, not better, once it starts going rusty. This is the problem with using products like bed liner. Yes, it's makes absolute sense to use something as tough as possible. I've been guilty of this myself in the past, but the problem is you'll have exceptional protection to start with, but then when that protection starts to fail, which it will do, everything's fallible. In the end, it will always need extra work at some stage. It will always go wrong, and once it starts going wrong, if it's super tough, it will rust underneath far better than something that's softer. The only other thing I could say that I would really sort of be wary about is don't just apply wax over a rusty car surface. So if the floor's looking really rusty, you see a lot of rust under there, if you don't want to go to the extremes that I have done, you're probably far better off just giving it a good wire brush down and then undersealing straight over the top. If you put wax straight over the top of, you know, like a rusty surface, the wax kind of mixes with the rust and it sort of forms this yucky emulsion stuff that it just stays wet all the time. And on a dry day, I see these cars come in, and on a dry day I scrape this off and it's all wet underneath where the moisture can't get out. So that's something I definitely advise against. Car dipping, I've heard lots of anecdotal sort of evidence of people that I know, some good, some bad. Few people telling me that they've taken restorations on after the customers had the car dipped, then they get the car to panel up and paint, and then sort of months down the road when the humidity level rises, they've got all sort of acid leaching out of joints afterwards, which is quite a horror story for me to hear. And I've heard stories about people that have had it done and it's been the best thing they've ever had done. So I don't know enough about this subject, and of course there's always going to be good and bad people doing this kind of thing, but that's the limit of my experience on that subject. Metal spraying, so there's metal arc spraying, where they have a metal arc spray gun that vaporizes zinc and sprays at high pressure, hits the panel, sticks to it, as opposed to having to have it electroplated. So that's something else that you could look into. Again, I've not really had a lot of experience in this kind of thing, but that's something else I have heard about, which can be quite advantageous. So anyway, I think I've practically covered everything that I know. If there's any products that you believe are really, really good, or you know, perhaps better than the stuff I've used, then please comment on this down in the comment section. I've just given you the best of my knowledge that I know at the time of making this video. So yeah, that's it, I'm off. Bye for now.